afternoon, everybody. We are here for another one of our expert interviews. Today, we have got none other than Brendan Bartic, one of the top agents in the company, awesome team owner, coming in to talk to us about the path to ownership. So while everyone is kind of logging in and getting started here, I will introduce myself for those of you that don't know me yet. My name is Liz Landry. I am your KW Talent Community Leader, and we are focused all things people. If it touches an org model, pay scale, or coaching and development of other people, I got you. So let's go ahead as our last few people get logged in here so we can respect your time and get started with Brendan. So Brendan, welcome to the KW Talent Expert Interview Series. Tell us a little bit about you before we get into this interview, all about the path to ownership.
And Liz, thank you for having me. And I think this is probably one of the most needed communities in all of real estate is, it's all about people and it's all about scale and growing and leverage. And so I'm excited to share today. So Brendan Bartic, I've been in residential real estate for about 22 years. I've done every type of position from buyer's agent, real estate assistant to everything under the sun. Currently, I now have the Colorado region's #1 real estate team, which is Elite Home Partners. Last year, we did about 5.7 million in gross commission income in GCI. I also am an owner and OP of a market center here in Denver, Colorado. And I have title companies and other businesses, and I'm also a MAPS coach, national sales trainer. And now my passion is just trying to help others get to where they want to go and have massive success. So that's what I have a passion for.
I love it. So we're here today to talk about a subject that's kind of confusing for a lot of people, and it's not very widely discussed in our industry. And that is, what is the path to actually owning in a real estate company look like? And I think there's two sides to that coin as we enter this. One, you may be the person who is in a real estate company going to your Rainmaker saying, hey, I want a way to have ownership. This is important to me. Or you may be on the flip side. You may be the Rainmaker who's saying, I'm not sure what on earth this would look like. And so here's what I would ask before Brendan gets started here is just kind of talk to everybody and say, I want you all to approach this with an open mind, first of all. And we tend to have a lot of ego in real estate businesses. That's right. Like our name is generally the business. And so we kind of associate, this is our baby. We started as a single agent, we grew it, and now it's this team. And there's a lot of fears around having multiple owners in the businesses. And Brendan, along with several other very large teams in our company, have found really good ways to create win-win scenarios for everybody to succeed. And Brendan's going to share his today. So I ask that everyone keep an open mind if that is you. So Brendan, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Liz. So when we're talking about creating a company of we and not me, and for some of you, you may think that your company already is a we company, meaning that you love your agents, you love your team, you do everything, whether you're in production or you're no longer in production. And we're going to be talking about ownership for a real estate team, not a brokerage, not anything else. So our journey and the reason why we kind of had this epiphany is we continued to have an issue. The name of our team for years was the Bartic Group at Keller Williams, right? And as I started to help agents and develop talent, we went through this cycle of hiring people, losing people, hiring people, losing people. We would develop them, give them tons of leads, train them, make them expert listing specialists, do all of these things. And then they would either go and do it themselves, or they would get an offer from a competing company for something that they couldn't possibly, think in their mind that they couldn't refuse. But the continued feedback that we would hear often was, this sounds like something, that again, Brendan's winning, and the money that I put into the company goes to make Brendan in his life bigger. And even though I didn't feel that that was the case, I continued to hear that feedback. So we went to the whiteboards and kind of locked ourselves in a room for a few days and said, okay, let's think this through and go, if we were to create a new hybrid of real estate team, what are the agents' problems? What are what are the issues that they have? What are the issues that we have with this, right? What is the friction that we have in our current organization? And could we develop a better way? And in that development, we went and realized that there was three things that we wanted to focus on that would make us very unique. Number one, we wanted to create an ownership program that made the company all about us and not about me or my name. Number two, we call that path to ownership. Number two, we wanted to create path to leadership. So we said, look, it's great being a 15-person, 12-person team. There's nothing wrong with that. And we were extremely profitable. Everything is fine. But we go, we're not really making a legacy for others, right? If we stay at this size, no matter how good we are, unless every agent does 400 sales a year, we're going to cap. We just couldn't get past this bigger number for our style. So we said, we want to grow and we want to make sure that every member in the organization that's contributing to growing with us has the opportunity to be an owner of this organization and also have a path to leadership. So if they want to go from agent to launch coach to, in our world, we call them TLs, team leaders, but I know Keller team leaders are a little bit different, but more of like, we call them squad leaders in a lot of ways, right? They're like a PC coach, but they manage a group of people.
Frequently, yeah, a lot of people would call that a pod leader, right? Or a lead
pod leader.
in some
Yes.
things. Yeah. But inside of the team structure, because the team leader, we think Market Center team leader. Yeah.
You're exactly right. And then from there, director of sales, regional director, and so on. Very much like a Keller Williams regional structure. So, looking at that structure, we said, well, right now you can either be an agent, director of sales, or the CEO. And those were really the only kind of three paths that we had at that current time.
So Brendan, you said you had what, 15 people at that time when you kind of decided and brought this to life. How much profit were you guys making at that point in time as a company?
So we were probably like at $1.1 million at that time.
And you were doing no kinds of profit share, like bonus share or anything like that?
Nope. Yeah, no rev share, no profit share, none of that. It was just,
Brendan making $1 million a year. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I followed the original model, right? Yeah. My first goal when I was at another company, I was making $1 million, but I wasn't netting. Then when I understood Keller Williams, I was like, okay, make it, net it, right? Receive it, and then give it. And so my whole thing now is receiving it, and now of course trying to get to that next, give $1 million. But in doing that, yeah, I was looking at this and I was going, okay, great. And people will be like, you're crazy for doing this. But it was still getting to the point where it was always going to be capped at that, right? I wanted to go not only for my own personal income, but I cared about the people that had worked so hard to become, do all of this with me, our internal staff, our agents. So we said, okay, path to leadership. And then the third piece that we developed was a path to passive income, which is a rev share plan. We call it G share, GCI share. So in our company, everyone was like, G share, it's like a whole thing. So yeah, it really came to life. So we took those three and we whiteboarded them out and we said, okay, what is going to have to happen for today's session? We'll talk about path to ownership. What is going to have to happen to make a true ownership option? So one of the books that I recommend if you're interested in this is The Greater Game of Business. It's a great book that talks about how to build an organization like this. But really the model was right in front of us. Keller Williams Market Centers are open book. They are a very similar model, 100 shares. You buy in, there's a rev share model, AKA profit share. Certain piece gets divvied out. And so we looked at it and we said, well, there's a lot of things that work on that, but there's a few things that we need to tweak. So when we started to build this, we said, okay, first of all, we're going to do 1 million shares, right? And the reason for starting out with 1 million shares was we wanted to make sure that we had enough shares to, of course, be awarding to people. So we have 3 ways in our organization. You can be awarded shares, you can purchase shares, or you can earn shares. And I'll talk about that here with a visual here in a second. So we said, okay, we want to make sure we have enough that, again, even if people have 500 shares, right, out of 1 million shares, that mindset in their head switches a different gear. And that means that they have like 0.0000005% ownership of the company, right? When you're thinking 500 shares out of a million. But you award somebody 500 shares and they feel that now it's we and not you and me, mindset changes, the way that they approach everything. And then we also help people to understand what the whole business is so that we can control cost, so we can make educated decisions. But instead of me going, yeah, I know everybody wants to go to family reunion on our dime, they would look at it and go, yeah, we're not doing that unless we have sponsors, and that's going to affect our profit, and I'm not going to get the check, my dividend check that I was wanting to have. So it really switched the mindset of how people looked at the company. So
It's
first step is,
interesting when you look at that. One of the things that I was listening to a podcast last week, and it was talking about co-op companies, like famous co-ops, like people might know, like REI co-op, right? Like privately owned companies where it's owned by the employees. Publix, for those of you in the Southeast, the great grocery store of Publix with pub subs is this way. It is a privately owned corporation, right? It's company and its employees own it. I've never worked for Publix. I cannot go buy stock in Publix. I would have to work there. And then, like in Brendan's model here, of earn the right to own stock in this company. There's been lots of studies done on companies that operate this way of how much happier the employees are and how much more vested in long-term careers there people are, right? Like companies that all fundamentally could run the same, except for this one factor is different. The people are happier and they stay longer.
yeah, and you're no longer an employee or an agent, you're a partner. And that word, the power of that word, partner, right? In our organization, not a single person that works with us is an agent or an admin or an employee. We are all partners, right? We are partners. We are in business together. And you're probably going, well, there's some people on my team that I don't want to have involved in that. We'll talk about that process. There's of course bumpers in all of this that we have to put, safety measures to make sure it all works. So in doing that, when you start out thinking, first of all, if you're even thinking about doing this, going, okay, I'm going to start with a share amount. Then you have to calculate a share value. And I'll show you a slide here in a second to calculate a share value, an initial share value. Now, before I go any further, anything I tell you, please, this is educational entertainment only. Go check with a lawyer, check with anybody to make sure, because do not hold me to this and you get sued or anything happens, right? Like this works for us. We've had a lot of success with it. We went from, I think at the time we had 12 agents. We went from 12 to 143 partners in less than 12 months. And I do believe a lot of it had to do with this program and switching the mindset. So you start with a share value, then you start with, or amount of shares, start with a share value. Then you have to think about how you're going to either award, earn, or receive those shares. And I'll show you here in a second the systems that we put into place. Now, we went to the lawyers. Of course, there's agreements, just like if you become an owner in a market center, right? There's 92-page operating agreements. There's all of these things you have. Now, again, I will say this, if you're wanting to do this, you can always connect with me offline. I'm always happy to help and try to get you into those next steps of where you're wanting to go with it. But yeah, there's gonna be some front side work to really develop this. But when you look at it long-term, are you trying to build a legacy company like a Publix, right? Or do you just want to forever have a team? And then what happens after that? If you don't have a family member that's going to carry on the name, you think Susie Smith is going to carry on the Bartic Group legacy? I don't know. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying it was one of the things that we didn't feel was going to work for us. So we decided to rebrand the entire company, went from the Bartic Group to Elite Home Partners, right? So EHP. And in doing that, we had a huge launch, a huge release. We had a State of the Union company. And again, that was still only like 12, well, probably with our admin staff and everything, probably 16, 17 people at the time. And we said, here's the vision. So we casted the vision. We said, here's what's going to happen. And here's our vision of where we see us going with this. And I was telling Liz, a book that helped us quite a bit was Traction, right? We used a lot of the Traction models to really kind of develop this. And I'll share with you, kind of our vision of how this looked. And again, if you know Traction, we just stole this from Traction and modified it to our own use, right? So
for those of you looking up Traction right now, that's Gino Wickman's book, Traction.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, it's amazing. So we went to this and we said, look, there's going to be 6 key components that we have to focus on. We have to have a leadership team, path to leadership, path to ownership, path to passive income. And then, of course, we have to recruit and onboard. And then we have to create a culture of gamification, right? And a lot of this ownership, not only the ownership, but the G share, it's gamification. It's getting people excited so that they know that we have this big goal. They're a part of the big goal. When they do the certain lead measures that lead to the lag measures, they get rewarded, and they get rewarded in different types of ways. So that was a big piece for us to kind of go and visualize that model. Then we said, okay, we know that we want to, first of all, be able to award shares to our partners based upon success metrics. So remember, we have 1 million shares to start the company with. Out of the gate, to get adoption, we had a huge party, a huge kind of launch party. And for the veterans that were already with us, and including our internal staff, we started out, for me, I just remember I own all the shares. So first thing is, you're probably like, I own all 1 million shares to start with. So I looked at it and I said, I'm going to give shares, kind of like a Christmas bonus, if you really want to think about it, or any type of bonus. I'm going to give shares, and we had stock or share certificates, and we handed these out because we knew if we didn't start with first going, welcome, besides this, what you're seeing here, the production levels, if we didn't immediately go, you're now part of our company, if you want to be. Now, we still had financial things we had to check through, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But people, when they received that, it was like we became a new company overnight. People now said, oh my gosh, I'm an owner in this amazing real estate organization. I see a clear vision where they're wanting to go with it. We explained the model on how, as we grow, the share value goes up. Because what we figured out, and this is the one point that Liz asked me, one of the points that I really want to nail down, one of the biggest points that we realized is it's not about unit count, meaning pure unit count, right? Some of us build Navy SEAL teams and we're going, we want 10 agents selling 50 homes. And we try to just get them there, and we're trying to shove this down their throats and go sell, 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 sell. And a lot of people don't want to sell 50 homes. A lot of people don't want to sell 20 homes. Some people want to sell 100 homes. Everybody's different. So if we could create a model, when we have spreadsheets and show you all this, if we looked at it and we said, what we really need to do is have the average agent on our team sell 5 units a year. And when we have enough agents selling 5 units a year, then our profit and our share value will get to where it needs to be. So it came much more about building a scalable organization with the right people, the right cultural people that were part of the organization. But some of my favorite agents in my organization will sell 4 houses this year, but they do more for the team as an owner than the people that are selling 100 houses, because the people selling 100 houses don't have any more time. They don't have any time to do anything else. So I looked at that. That was my big thing. I used to make sure, I was like, everybody's got to sell at least 50 houses a year to be on this team. Like we were very, standard heavy, and you have to hit your call numbers. We still, of course, have standards, but we customize it to the agent much more like a brokerage, right? Like we're a hybrid, right? We're not a team. We're not a brokerage.
It's a more independent model, right? And so when you look
Exactly.
at it, we have the independent, the dependent, and then we have the stuff in the middle. You're lean towards the independent side.
Right. And the breakthrough for us, Liz, is on the dependent side of it, we of course have leads and ISAs and we produce this, but the people that do the right things get turned on for those. When I say the right things, these are the top killer producers that are going after it. Those that get. The people that are there for like community and culture, there's ways to get turned on for our advanced levels of what we provide, right? We call it our leads program, right? So there's all kind of ways, and we learned a lot from different companies, and I went out and researched all these different things on how they were doing it. So it was able to keep our costs down, because the biggest thing that people think about when you have 150 agents, how do you afford the leads? Here's what'll blow your mind. On an average week, out of our 150 agent population, 20 at most are turned on for leads, because they did what we needed to do, right? We have a certificate kind of program every week that's audited through a virtual assistant. And it's simple things, right? You've got to do X amount of this, X amount of that. The database has to be clean with this, and you have to attend, we have our Pulse program, right? Pulse. You have to attend Pulse, you have to track your numbers, and you have to post your scoreboard. You don't do that because you got too busy, then you need a week off. You get caught up. So looking at that population, you're not spending this huge amount of expenditure, because not everybody is the same, right? And they're fine with that, because some people don't want what the other person wants. So I think that was a big piece. So as we developed this, then we said, okay, we want to start after the initial release. And I think on the initial release, for every single person, I probably did, I'll have to look back, 1,000 shares, right? So let's say that 15,000 shares out of 1 million shares were distributed to our ownership team. And when you think about 1 million and then 1,000, that means that they own a very, very small fragment. But when you tell somebody that they have 1,000 shares and they're now an owner in this organization, mindset changes immediately. So then we said, okay, now we want people to become bigger owners, thrive to do more. So we said, okay, let's have our award sharing program. So anytime that you are the #1 top agent in closed GCI in the quarter, you're awarded 1,000 shares. If you're the top team leader, right, like we said, pod leader, not including your personal production, your team's production, that team leader earns 1,000. And we started out with 1 team leader, now we have 5, right? So we have squads inside that 150, and those 5 people handle those 150. And then we have launch coaches built in it, kind of like a market center in a little bit of a ways, right? So we just built tiers, right? I come from a military background. It's like company, battalion, platoons, squads. Well, that's a little bit reversed, but it's close to that, right? So then the last one is G-Share. So we also created a rev share program that we modeled off of a new company that had come out, where anytime someone comes into our organization and you're the reason they came, you get 5% of their GCI of any deal they close. When they add 10 people, you unlock the next level. You get 5% off them, 4% off of anyone else they brought in, and it goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Again, if you have interest on this, I'll send you all the stuff on it. I'm more than happy to share. But those were the pivotal things that really kind of made this whole thing come to life. So then imagine for recruiting, we don't call it recruiting, we call it attraction in our company. But for attraction, we started saying, now we were having conversations with teams. We took the #4 agent at EXP here in Colorado. He joined with his 6-person team, absorbed him into our company. He became an owner. He received additional shares because he was already doing over 1 million in GCI with his team. So now we go, look, because he was stuck. What you don't realize is a lot of people hate being a 6-person team owner. Not hate, but they're getting frustrated because it's hard, it's exhausting. You're putting your heart and soul into it. We go, use
and they're not breaking through that natural ceiling of achievement, and a lot of them don't have the desire to do what needs to be done to break that natural ceiling of achievement too, and so they just keep hitting their head.
It's really hard. It's really hard. I lived it for years, right? So we go, use our infrastructure, become part of our entire organization. You're going to have long-term legacy. You're going to be an owner. Your team members are going to be happier. You don't have to put on the weekly team meeting. You don't have to do the gamification. You don't have to do, get the printing materials and deal with the director of marketing. You don't have to do any of that. All you got to do is come and lead and be a good person and help your people succeed. So that gave us the ability to really start attracting better and higher quality talent so that we could start absorbing team owners or even top producing individual agents that were just tired and didn't see an exit strategy. The word that I use in any of these meetings is I go, and I got this, and Liz knows Jordan Freed very well. He has these 4 questions that I ask everyone. Jordan Freed's my coach. And he has these 4 questions that really hit home for me. He was like, #1, first of all, what's your ideal job description? And I always think about this. What's my ideal job description? So when I'm on an interview, I ask these top producers this. What's your ideal job description? And it's rare that you hear them say, like, I want to sell houses till I die, or that I want to do this.
I want to do paperwork all day.
All day. It's usually, I want to help people. I like teaching. I've done enough business now that I'd like to start not having to be out in the field so much. So the second question is, great, what's your exit strategy? And I guarantee you 98% of this population does not have their exit strategy crystal clear. So then third question, how much do you need in monthly passive income for you to make that a reality, right? So that you could do your ideal job description, have your exit strategy. How much do you need in monthly income? And I'm doing this very fast, but there's a whole dialogue that goes along with this. And number 4, what system or organization are you attached to make all 3 a reality? And boy, you use that when people start, they'll even leave there from the lunch and go home and they'll think about it and be like, I thought about your 4 questions. I want to know more about EHP, Elite Home Partners. So can we have another meeting, right? It's that kind of conversation that really helped us. So that bottom half that you're seeing here, that's those for attracting those bigger partners. Now, for the share value, to try to calculate this, and again, check with your lawyer, whatever. What we did is when you take 1 million shares, right, you're going to create your net equity. So all we do to create a share valuation is trailing 12 months of company dollar. So first of all, you have to get comfortable with becoming open book. And we had to clean up a lot of the books before we did this. And when I say clean up, like I had my
Your spare thing you bought on the business card's gotta
yeah,
go.
like
Yeah.
I had like my golf membership on it or stuff, stuff that was on there. I was like, this is not going to look good, but it didn't matter for me, personally when I was just doing stuff. So you got to clean up your P&L. It's not as hard as you think. Then you take your company dollar. Remember, company dollar is the money that we make after splits with our team. So we took the trailing 12 months company dollar from the existing team plus our net equity, how much cash we had currently in the bank at that time. So for this example, let's just say, as you can see below, 100 grand. So our share value for the company was 1.3 million, right? Let's just say that was one, and this is just an example, this isn't actual, but so 1.3. Then all you're doing is taking the 1.3 million, dividing it by 1 million shares, and now you have a share value. And that share value might be 88 cents to start with. It might be 92 cents, right? Right now, I think we're at $3.16 a share, right? So it obviously has grown as this whole thing has happened. There's, of course, a share value memorandum that explains all this. And then, of course, there's a variety of agreements that have to go along with it. Now, in the ownership process, we start every conversation with a non-disclosure agreement. We have a standard NDA. So before I meet with the team and show them projections, show them anything about share ownership, they have to sign off on that. Then we go through our ownership program review, which again is just like a 30-minute webinar explaining, I don't know, if you've got pitched on buying anything, a timeshare in Florida, right? Like you kind of go through and explain this process. We have an ownership interview. So I have standard questions that I ask to make sure, hey, especially if they're purchasing shares. We've had agents on our team that made maybe 50 grand a year and they're so excited. They're like, I want to purchase shares. And I'm like, well, how much do you have in savings? They're like, I don't know, like 1,500 bucks. I'm like, yeah, no, you shouldn't be purchasing shares right now. Let's do the Dave Ramsey plan and get your emergency fund to where it needs to be. So not everybody can do it. And I told Liz earlier, with that awarding process, if we don't feel that they qualify for shares, we just pay them out in cash, the bonus for what the share value is at that time. So you don't have to give, you're never locked into having to give anybody shares ever. It is your company.
I think that's so important. And while a lot of people will be very turned on to the idea of it, there is a portion of people who are like, I see no value in that. I love it here. This place is awesome, but that's not valuable to me. 400 bucks would be more valuable to me, right?
Right,
Not
right.
everybody is going to be the same.
Yep, exactly right. Then we have a defense committee. So I go to our leadership team and I go, Sally wants to purchase ownership, or we were considering awarding her ownership. We go through this just like you would a defense panel with career visioning. It's very similar to that process. And thank you, Keller, for teaching me that. Then we send over the purchase agreement and then payments received. And then we celebrate ownership at the next organizational meeting, right? The next team meeting. And it's a big deal, right? It's a big deal, and we make people feel very special. You can put owner on your signature line and your email address, right? It's these little things that just will make people go to war for you. And that's not the right answer, but go to bat for you. I don't want them to go to war, right? So with that, building the ownership model, right? You're going to have a purchase agreement, rev share process, right? I do think if without the rev share, this also wouldn't work, because if you don't have a rev share process, meaning a way to attract and grow, you could have an ownership group, but if you're not going to grow and scale, there's no real reason to have an ownership program, because you're never going to get the share value to increase to an amount like Keller Williams has, right? You gotta get to a certain, just like any market center. Market centers that are 100 agents, they struggle unless they're, have a $70,000 cap or something. And I also know people that are playing around with this in smaller markets that are doing that and doing different things with it. But you really need to scale. Now, whatever scale means to you, but it doesn't mean you might not want to do an ownership program for 5 agents. I just don't see if that's your plan to stick with having 5
Here would be my
agents.
question on that as well, right? So the revenue share does the attraction. You started with 12 agents, you're 12 team members, you're like 150 now. How long is the time frame from your 12 to your 150?
Less than 12 months. So once we launched this, it
Less
was
than
in
12
less
months, you
than,
went from 12 to 150. And out of that
exactly.
150, how many are EHP owners? How many hold shares?
Right now, 29.
So 29 out of 150 hold shares.
Correct.
And so that means that there's 120 people out there that don't.
Yeah, and that either don't want to or are working their way into it or, figuring out their financial situation. I mean, they got to put braces on, Sally or whatever it is, all different things. So yeah, that's a great question. So obviously you have to have an operating agreement, a share value memorandum, and then a non-disclosure agreement. And then the last thing that I'll share, and then of course we can just talk, is now you got to bring it to life, right? So in our monthly meetings, first of all, we have a monthly ownership meeting. And I think that was very, very important, not just our team meeting, but a monthly ownership meeting. So we, of course, get into a room. Now we're doing it Zoom a lot of times, but we try to at least alternate to in person if possible or via Zoom. We start out, of course, with shout outs, positivity. Then we created, and I'll show you here in a second, we created our own multi-year trend for our team, right? I just modeled this off of Keller. And if you don't know what a multi-year trend is, I'll show you here in a second. But it's just it's a several page analysis of the organization that shows them, because we're open book, exactly what's happening. Here's how many people we brought in. Here's how many listings we closed. Here's how many buyers we closed. Here's all of this. Here's what our expenses were. And here's what we made in net owner profit this quarter. So you can calculate your share value versus what the profit was. And I'll talk about how we divide out profit just in a second, because you're going to want to build reserves in the beginning. I'll talk about that in just a second. So we go through the multi-year. Of course, you have to show them a balance sheet because, again, they're owners in your company. The share valuation update. So we show them the share calculation and where the share was last quarter. We only revise the share calculation once every quarter. So it doesn't happen like on the stock exchange every day. It doesn't go like, right? We go back, look at the last quarter, do that process that I showed you earlier. That establishes the share value. Then quarterly distribution projections. So we let them know here's what the check that you're going to be receiving. And then IDS is just issues, discussion, solved. So what issues are you guys seeing with us as an organization? Let's take a few minutes to discuss them. And then let's think about ways that we can solve them. So now it's we, and not me, me, me. So the last thing I'll just show is that sample multi-year trend, right? But this is easy. We just took it from Keller and we just modified it for our team. Now you might think you have one of these in Keller for your team, and you kind of do, but it doesn't have all of the details like profit and all of those things. We have some that are built into Keller that just shows us like, we did this many sales, we have this many people on our team, and we sold this many houses. So that made it very easy to help people also become more buy-in because they knew everything was open book. It wasn't like, for years I did like a profit share thing, or not for years, when we did this like for my internal staff, we followed the MREA, and I love that model in the MREA to doing a profit share disbursement. But a lot of times the issues that we found with it is they're going, well, Brendan, you decided to have the big end of year party. So now I'm making less because you decided to have that party? And I'm like, yeah, I like to party. Like, I don't know what to tell you, right? And so that didn't work. So this has now become the process, and yeah, that's how we've done it, and that's how we've grown.
So let me ask you on that. So there's quick growth on there. For anyone who was looking at those numbers on that multi-year trends that Brendan shared on there, you can see where it went from 30 deals, 40 deals, 50 deals to 150 deals on there. How, as the person kind of leading this ultimate charge on there, how abrupt has that been in a year for you? That
Yeah,
kind
so
of rapid growth.
yeah, rapid growth, and what it really made us have to do very quickly is build out the leadership team, right? So we went from me, I was the director of sales with the old team. There was no director of sales, there was no director of lead gen. We didn't have certain roles in the organization. So it was red light, green light. We made a certain profit goal, and we said when we surpass that profit goal, then that's going to open up another level of money to hire the next level of leadership. And the whole ownership team understood that as we started out. So when we're talking about quarterly distributions, the first thing I want you to make sure, if you even have any desire to do this, is you want to build up immediately 6 months of reserves, meaning 6 months of your expenses that if all the whole world comes to an end and we can't sell houses
Zero
anymore.
sales.
Zero sales, that you could pay everybody and be fine for the next 6 months. So in doing that, we didn't pay out 100% to distributions every quarter. We held back 50% of the profit until we got to that threshold. Now we pay out 75%. We still put 25% under the pillow or in the bank every single quarter to make sure that we're always safe. And of course, that affects the share value. And I keep telling them, I'm going, you still own that money, right? You own that money, even though we're saving it because you're an owner. It's part of the shares, right? So it's not like I'm just keeping it secret somewhere. So yes, so as you start to build that out, you want to make sure that you're cognizant of that. But you're exactly right, Liz. Building that leadership team was fast and scary, made a lot of mistakes. We had TLs that, in our world, pod leaders that shouldn't have been pod leaders that were in it just for the money and they were like, whatever. We had, just like anything, you want to make an omelet, we got to break some eggs. And we definitely broke some eggs. But I think as we look at this next evolution, we're now looking at it going, okay, we are in 3 market centers here locally. We're looking at it going, okay, once we master this locally, we didn't want to do, outside expansion. We're all in one MLS. We were like, once we figure out how to make the best Chick-fil-A here, then how do we take Chick-fil-A to Scottsdale? How do we take Chick-fil-A to wherever? And so now we're just looking at that next level of going, okay, who are we going to partner with next to run that EHP model and reciprocate it in the next location? So now it's just like anything. Our goal isn't to end at 150 agents. We have a very, very clear vision for a 10-year plan to have 5,000 elite home partners. And we think, well, that's a very conservative number. But again, we have fluctuated, right? We really thought that we were going to be on this pace to be like 100 and 200 and 300 and 400. Well, just like I was on the top agent mastermind with Gary, it's just like how he built Keller Williams. You get to one level, then you go, okay, I thought I had it all figured out. Liz, I was just talking about how when we did this, we thought we'd be at like 500 agents by now, to be honest with you, right? And what we're learning is that's not easier said than done. Those models start to break.
Right.
Your 20-person model is not a 50-person model. Your 50-person model is definitely not a 100-person model. But then as we start to get these bigger numbers, it kind of becomes a better model. But we had to rethink things, reorganize and restructure. And so we have a very big goal of growing to this larger agent count. And when we do, I feel like we're going to deliver legacy, long-term profit dividends. Now, the one last thing that I'll share is of course, one of the big things is vetting it. So when you own shares, very similar to Keller Williams, and maybe not with the new, commotion that's happening sometimes, but what I mean about the profit share, right, is when you own with us, if you've been there 3 years, your shares are vested, right? After 3 years, let's say I award you shares, Liz, you can't sell those shares for the first 3 years. So it also keeps people with you at least for 3 years if they're going to keep their shares. Now, after 3 years, they can sell those shares for whatever they want. They can sell them for 10 times the share value if they get someone to buy them for that amount. Of course, I approve all, share purchases, and there's an agreement that states how that's done. But you want to vest people for 3 years on any awarded shares. Then after that, they can be a shareholder and an owner in this company for the rest of their life as long as they don't join a competing brokerage, right? Now, and we also put a caveat on there, even if they stay with Keller Williams and we don't have an EHP location with Keller Williams, if they stay with Keller Williams, they will still receive their ownership payouts because that's on us that we couldn't have a location there, but they cannot join Dolphin Real Estate and compete against our culture and our company and still receive their share ownership.
What happens with people that leave or people that decide to go or competing? So thank you so much for answering that, because that was my last thing to loop it back around. And a few of the things that you said in here, Brendan, as we wrap it up, I think that are so important is it's not everybody. Everybody has the opportunity if it's right for them, but not everybody is opted into the opportunity. There are a portion of people that this is what will drive them. And there's a large portion of people who are either not ready for that or it's just not that important to them. That's not why they're there. However, the attraction standpoint, this is a large attractor, and then those people bring others with them because the bigger you get, the bigger you get. And I think it's interesting to look at. Someone may be wondering this, so I'll kind of give a couple of the basics on it here for them is why you went team versus why you went market center, right? Like, well, why not just start a market center if you were going to have 150 agents? I think everyone on this needs to hear that, especially in the Keller ecosystem model, a team with 150 people makes a whole lot more money than a market center with 150 people. Like, eons more revenue. That's why a team,
Because of the
right?
services you're providing. She's
Yeah,
exactly right. Because, and I tell everyone, we're a coalition. When we are able to pool all of our compensation together, right? When there's 100 of us paying into one pot, or 150 or 200 of us, as a team, we can have all of the Ferrari type things that we need. And remember, the people in our, and we have a team structure plan that's tiered, right, based on, I love talking team agreements, but right, the people that are doing high levels of business, they're going to be paying a lesser amount than the new people that have never done a deal before. But we make probably, I would say, 80% of our revenue off of people that are making their first 0 to 10 transactions, right? Because it takes the most time when it's not scaled correctly. But when we do that, that's why there's enough money to be able to do all of these things that we want to do as a coalition, instead of we've got 6 agents on our team and we're scrounging to figure out how we're going to have a happy hour.
yeah. And it's at scale, this works. And you said it earlier, if you got 6 people, this probably isn't going to work for you. This is a at scale is one of those important things. And that's the model based off of what Brendan did. That doesn't mean you can't do something similar in a smaller model and make it work. It just looks differently, right? It just looks differently.
Yeah, Liz, I
So
get people that are
Brendan,
like, so because
oh,
Liz, some people are like, I'm in Vail, and there's 300 people in our entire, MLS. And I go, I completely understand. Take the concept and just customize it to your needs if you want to go this route. But a big thing is you might have to let go of the name, that's a big thing. It was hard for me too. Everyone's like, everyone knows the Barter Group. I was like, nobody knows the Barter Group. I was like, I talk to people that don't know what Keller Williams is. You think they're going to know what the Barter Group is? Like, I was like, give me a break. That's ego. That's not reality. So yeah, that's a hard
I love
thing
when
if you're
people
going to
ask me,
create
they're
a
like,
lead,
where do you work? Keller Williams. What's that? Keller Williams
right?
Realty. Never heard of them. Are they
Yeah.
local? Just, largest real estate
Yeah.
company in the
Ego
world.
is a tough thing. It's just
It's,
fighting that
it's
ego.
it's just nothing. Yeah, people have no idea, which is ironic, right? Like, it's just kind of like, especially when I go to Austin and someone's like, what's Keller Williams?
You're like, I'm sorry, what? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
All
yeah,
right,
make it
Brendan,
about we,
what's your
not me.
mic drop? What's your one thing that you would leave everybody with so we can let these folks get back to their day of selling
And
houses?
it's gonna sound cheesy, but it's straight from the MRA. Think bigger, right? Think bigger. Just constantly think bigger. I was scared too. I'm scared every day. I'm not gonna lie. I'm scared, right? It's scary, but that I would rather be scared and build something exciting than I think sometimes we get really tunnel visioned and we're like, we want to be number 12 in our MLS and we want to be blah, blah, blah. And that's fine. I'm not taking anything away from that. But at some point, just go, there's nothing different. I say this all the time between me, you, or Gary Keller, except he has a better plan. He had a better plan. He had a better 5. He always says his 5 are better than my 5, and he's right, right? And he has the right people built around them. And then just decide on what model, what problems do you want to have? I didn't want to have Navy SEAL problems. I wanted to have Navy problems. And
Yep.
that was the big difference for me.
Yep. And which set of problems do you want to have? There's a billion different versions of a model. They all come associated with a set of problems. It's not
Yeah.
no problems. It's just which set.
Yeah. And if anyone needs any information, just email me at info@brendanbartic. Or just brendanbartic.com. I'm an open book. I will help you and send you anything I can if you're even considering this. But yeah, and of course with lawyers' approval.
Well, and Brendan, we will be emailing you to collect all of that to put
Oh, great.
within this video as well, whatever we can on there with your approval and your lawyer's approval, obviously, as well. Thank you so much for this interview. This is fantastic. And I love the transparency. And this is not something that a lot of people want to share about because it usually is messy and it's dirty behind the scenes and it's complicated and the transparency of it and the ability to go, hey, look, this is what it looks like to actually do this. And here's a framework for it is so powerful to somebody who in the back of their head knows they want to do it, but just didn't know how to take the next step. That's huge. So thank you so much. And thank you,
My pleasure.
Angela, for stepping in while my internet flew the coop today. That always, it's always good to have the support behind the scenes. This is what makes it go round, right?
That's it.
All right, Brendan, thank you so much. We will see
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a
Take
great
care.
day.
Thanks, everyone. See ya.